These are the most interesting historical photos and unusual objects from the past. Let's get 100,000 subscribers. In 1912, researchers in the Philippines wore such protective suits while working with the plague bacterium. It was the time of the third pandemic, which began in China and claimed millions of lives in Asia. In 1940, German troops marched past the French World War I memorial during the occupation of France. This parade symbolized the military superiority of Germany and the humiliation of the victorious country of the last war. The photo shows an antique donation box made of wood and iron-bound fittings. A narrow slot at the top was intended for coins, and a lock at the front protected the contents from theft. Similar boxes were used in churches and public institutions in Europe in the 15th to 19th centuries. The photo shows a BK 3.7 anti-tank cannon under the wing of a Ju-87G Kanonenvogel dive bomber. The 37mm cannon was used to fight tanks and was actively used on the Eastern Front in 1943-1945. The photo shows an antique tin packaging of Band-Aid Band-Aids from Johnson & Johnson with the addition of antiseptic mercurochrome. Such first aid kits were produced in the middle of the 20th century and were intended for the treatment and dressing of small wounds. In the photo from 1922, Carlos P. Romulo with his future wife, Virginia Llamas, who became the Queen of the Philippine Carnival. Romulo later became a renowned diplomat and Pulitzer Prize winner. A photograph from late 1899 purportedly shows Apolinario Mabini, Emilio Aguinaldo's advisor, who was called the brain of the revolution. Being paralyzed, he moved around in a hammock and was captured by American troops during the Philippine-American War. The photo shows the Mint-Washington Cog Railroad in New Hampshire, the first gear railroad built to climb a high mountain. Its construction began in 1858 and continued after the Civil War, opening a route for tourists to the top of Mount Washington in 1869. American soldiers inspect the damaged Maginot Line bunker in France, 1945. These fortifications, built in the 1930s, were partially used by the Germans and then occupied by the Allies at the end of the war. The photo shows ancient prosthetic arms made of wood, metal and leather, made in the early 20th century. Such mechanical structures allowed wounded veterans to partially restore the functions of the hand and forearm. American soldiers enjoy bottles of Coca-Cola in positions during World War II. During the war years, the company produced and distributed more than 5 billion bottles of the drink free of charge to US military personnel. Ishi, the last known representative of the Yahi tribe in California, spent more than 40 years in isolation after the extermination of his people in the 19th century. In 1911, he came out to people in the town of Oroville, where he became an object of study by anthropologists and preserved the knowledge of his culture for history until his death in 1916. The photographs depict the process of artisanal production of rocket ammunition during the Great Patriotic War, the formation of fairings, pouring molten TNT and assembling the hulls. Such flying torpedoes were created in the field as an addition to the serial M13 projectiles for the Red Army Rocket Artillery. A rare promotional photo of Audrey Hepburn, taken in 1956 during ballet classes. Before becoming an actress, she was seriously engaged in dancing and dreamed of becoming a ballerina. In 1943, former waitress Easton Cowher worked as a scaler during the construction of the Liberty-class cargo ship SS George Washington Carver. Thousands of women in the United States mastered difficult professions during World War II, replacing men who went to the front. In a photo from 1935, a police dog named Tess demonstrates her telephone skills. These service animals were trained to perform special tasks, including transmitting signals and searching for people. Albert Einstein, known not only as a physicist but also as a passionate musician, plays the violin, 1927. He considered music an important part of his life and often used the game to reflect on scientific ideas. In 1954, Marilyn Monroe mastered an oxygen mask aboard a US Air Force plane en route to Korea, where she performed in front of American military personnel. These concerts were part of her tour to support the Army after the Korean War. The photo shows an old Kent's knife cleaner mechanical device from the late 19th, early 20th century. With its help, by rotating the handle, it was possible to clean and polish knives, which made it a popular kitchen device of the Victorian era. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, in a wheelchair on the veranda of his house-top cottage in Hyde Park, New York, 1941. Next to him is his dog Falah and the girl Ruth B., the daughter of the estate manager. Women's bicycle race in Cabourg, France, 1894. Such competitions reflected the growing interest of women in sports and the struggle for equality at the end of the 19th century. A mule, loaded with parts of a 75mm mining gun, was photographed at the Elswick Works in Newcastle upon Tyne, early 20th century. The animals were used to transport collapsible artillery systems in remote areas. Photographs taken by Napoleon Cerrone in 1893 show women's fashion using a crinoline and a tourniquet. Such structures made of metal or whale bones created voluminous silhouettes typical of the late 19th century. This is one of the earliest electric fans created at the end of the 19th century. It was powered by a simple DC electric motor and became the prototype of modern desktop fans used in everyday life. The 1930 photo shows a humanoid robot named George, created by engineer Alan Herbert Reffel and Captain W.H. Richards. The robot could perform simple movements and became one of the earliest examples of the development of cybernetics and robotics. A milkman from Parita, Costa Rica, transports milk cans tied to a horse's saddle, circa 1940-1943. This method of delivery was traditional in rural areas before the proliferation of refrigerator cars. The photo shows the Wonder Washer mechanical washing machine of the early 20th century, manufactured by Victor MFG Co. She worked manually. The laundry was washed in a tank using levers and then passed through wringer rollers. An African-American newspaper salesman in the USA, 1921. Newspapermen played an important role in spreading news in cities, working on the streets for a modest income. Sewing class at Western College, 1918. Women manually make clothes and bandages for the needs of the army. Such activities became part of the mobilization of the civilian population during the First World War. A B-24 Liberator flies over an oil refinery in Ploiesti, Romania on August 1, 1943. Operation Tidal Wave was a major US Air Force raid on oil facilities of the Third Reich. As a result of the attack, the Allies suffered heavy losses, but temporarily reduced fuel supplies to Germany. Japanese soldiers pose in front of a giant statue of the reclining Buddha in Burma, 1942. The photo was taken during the Japanese occupation of Burma in World War II. Temples and monasteries were often used as places of temporary deployment of troops. A photo and a note sent by a girl to her lover during World War II, April 1945. He served on a ship off the coast of the Philippines and kept this message all his life. The inscription read, "Do you remember me? I'm the girl who loves you." Signing of the Act of Surrender of Japan aboard the battleship USS Missouri, September 2, 1945. The Japanese delegation was led by Foreign Minister Mamoru Shigemitsu and General Yoshijiro Umezu. The event marked the official end of World War II. Princess Elizabeth and her fiancé Philip Mountbatten during an official photo shoot at Buckingham Palace, July 10, 1947. 4 months later, their wedding took place at Westminster Abbey. This marriage became one of the longest in the history of the British monarchy. A man, held by a guide, bends over the edge of the crater of the Aso volcano in Japan, around 1906. The photographer is Herbert Ponting, the future chronicler of Scott's expedition to Antarctica. Aso volcano is considered one of the most active in Japan. Christina Applegate and Johnny Depp at a charity event, 1987. Both were at the peak of their youth and were starting to build careers in Hollywood. This picture has become one of the symbols of the late 80s era. In Star Wars: A New Hope, 1977, Luke Skywalker's speeder looked like it was hovering over the Tatooine desert. To do this, the film crew installed mirrors on the sides of the car, which reflected the ground and hid the wheels. This technique created the effect of levitation without computer graphics, which was an innovative solution in the cinema of that time. Bob Marley at the age of 20, 1965. At this time, he was already performing with the band The Wailers, which was beginning to gain popularity in Jamaica. The young musician will soon become a reggae icon and cultural icon. Elvis Presley was drafted into the US Army on March 24, 1958. He served in West Germany as part of the 3rd Armoured Division. During his service, the singer was promoted to sergeant and served until March 1960. Ella Fitzgerald was arrested in Houston in 1955 for performing in front of a mixed white and black audience. Dizzy Gillespie and other orchestra musicians were detained with her. This case has become a high-profile example of racial discrimination in the American music industry. In 1982, the future Pope Leo XIII, who had just been ordained, met with Pope John Paul II. The meeting symbolized the continuity of generations in the Catholic Church. Today, this moment is considered as historically significant in the development of the papacy. Paris, 1930. The wedding couple is riding on the same bike. The groom is driving, the bride is wearing a veil from behind. The photo captures a rare wedding ritual shot of interwar France. Adam Rayner, 1899 to 1950, a native of Austria, remains the only person in history classified as both a dwarf and a giant. In his youth, his height was only 142 cm, which referred to dwarfism. After the pituitary tumour, he began to grow rapidly and reached 220 cm by the age of 30, which led to severe complications and early death. 1918. A coal mine. Miners find a petrified stump preserved inside a coal seam. This rare geological site demonstrates ancient forests that formed coal millions of years ago. Torgau, Germany, April 25, 1945. American Lieutenant William Robertson and Soviet Lieutenant Alexander Silvashko pose in front of the East meets West sign. This day went down in history as the meeting of the Allied armies on the Elbe, symbolizing the final break of Germany in two. Princeton, 1950. Albert Einstein gives his first lecture at the Institute for Advanced Study, where he worked from 1933 until his death. This place became the main centre of his research on unified field theory. London, 1942. 11-year-old Audrey Hepburn tries her hand at her first theatrical audition in the midst of World War II. Subsequently, these early studies on the stage became the basis of her future acting career. Frank Sinatra at his easel, 1949. The artist was fond of painting, and in his spare time he painted paintings, among which there were images of clowns. David Bowie and Catherine Deneuve play chess in 1983. The photo was taken on the set of the movie Hunger, where both played the main roles. The picture shows a rare behind-the-scenes moment between the two iconic artists. A Japanese-American family prepares to be forcibly deported to an internment camp in 1942. The decision to relocate was made by President Franklin Roosevelt after the attack on Pearl Harbor. There were more than 120,000 people of Japanese descent in such camps. Newlyweds ride a decorated bicycle after their wedding in Paris, 1930. The groom is wearing a top hat and a tuxedo. The bride is holding a bouquet of flowers. Onlookers and police gathered outside, watching the march. This is an old arcade strength tester machine from the early 20th century. The player had to hit, squeeze, or pull the handle to light the lamps and show the power level. Similar devices were installed in bars and amusement parks as a popular challenge for visitors. An American aviator in full high-altitude gear stands by a B-24 bomber, 1944-1945. On board the aircraft, there are marks of combat sorties and victories, as well as characteristic nose art. Such crews participated in the strategic bombing of Europe during the Second World War. This is a travel first aid kit of the extreme 19th century, equipped with dozens of glass vials with medicinal substances. Each vial was numbered and accompanied by a handwritten catalogue describing the contents and dosages. Similar kits were used by doctors and wealthy travellers to provide medical care on the road. In 1986, French woman Nadine Vaujour organised the daring escape of her husband, prisoner Michel Vaujour, from La Santé prison in Paris. She secretly obtained a pilot's licence, rented a helicopter and landed it directly on the roof of the prison, allowing her husband to climb aboard. A year later, the couple was detained in Uruguay, but their escape went down in history as one of the most daring and unusual. In 1918, large tubes of rolled glass were manufactured at the Pilkington Glass Laitee plant in St Helens. The workers carried them by hand, which required protective gloves and precision. The picture captures the stage of glass production in industrial Britain at the beginning of the 20th century. US Marines used flamethrowers during the battles for Iwo Jima, February 1945. These operations were conducted to burn down Japanese fortifications and cave shelters. The battle became one of the bloodiest in the Pacific Campaign of World War II. In 1961, Michael Rockefeller, the son of New York Governor Nelson Rockefeller, went missing in Papua New Guinea. His boat capsized during an expedition to the Asmartian tribe, and it was officially believed that he had drowned. However, photos of a white man among the Asmartians that appeared years later gave rise to theories about his possible survival and life in the tribe. But no evidence of this has been found. Crown Prince Wilhelm, son of Kaiser Wilhelm II, inspects German troops during the First World War, around 1915. The photograph captures the direct involvement of the Hohenzollern dynasty in military operations. Students in Sydney, Australia, 1930s. Children line up for free soup and bread. Support measures during the Great Depression, when thousands of families found themselves without jobs and means of livelihood. A Sicilian man treats American soldiers to wine, July 1943. The scene reflects the meeting of local residents with Allied troops during the Sicilian operation in World War II. Elizabeth Taylor on the set of the movie The Giant, 1955. The film, which became one of the most iconic in her career, brought the actress worldwide recognition and became a Hollywood classic. Ernest Hemingway during boxing sparring in Africa, early 1950s. The writer has been interested in boxing all his life and often arranged fights during his travels and safaris. An ancient board game from Mohenjo-Daro, the Indus Valley civilization, circa 2600 BC. Stone figures and a playing field indicate a developed culture and passion for games thousands of years before the advent of chess. A girl from Marika, Ukraine, in a traditional wedding dress. The beginning of the 20th century. The clothes are decorated with ornaments, medals, and elements of the national costume, reflecting local customs. The Antikythera mechanism, circa 100 BC, is an ancient Greek device with a system of bronze gears used to calculate the movement of the sun, moon, and planets. It is considered to be the earliest analog computer in history. Lithuania, 1992. Girls with long hair gathered for the casting of models, reflecting the popularity of natural beauty and national fashion standards in the post-Soviet period. The landing of the US Marines on the island of Iwo Jima, February 1945. The photo captures the moment of a large-scale amphibious operation during one of the fiercest battles of the Pacific Campaign of World War II. A worker carries out quality control of Pepsi Cola bottles at a factory in the USA in the 1940s. The automatic line has already pasted branded labels on the batch of drinks. Such systems made it possible to speed up mass production and provide a single design standard. Pepsi was actively competing with Coca-Cola at that time, increasing production volumes. The German submarine U-118 from the First World War washed ashore near Hastings, England in 1919. The ship was handed over to the Allies under the terms of the German surrender and broke off tow en route. The huge submarine attracted thousands of onlookers, becoming an unexpected attraction along the coast. Later, it was dismantled for metal on the spot. German soldiers during the offensive on the Eastern Front, October 28, 1941. A village in the USSR is burning after arson, used as a tactic of intimidation and destruction of infrastructure. These actions accompanied the advance of the Wehrmacht deep into Soviet territory in the first months of the war. A girl tries to make a Royal Guardsman laugh in Stockholm, Sweden in the 1970s. Similar scenes often occurred with tourists, but the soldiers were required to maintain absolute calm and discipline. The Royal Swedish Guard has been guarding the palace since the 17th century and is known for its unwavering resilience. The aircraft carrier USS Franklin CV-13, after being attacked by Japanese bombers on March 19, 1945. 2 direct hits caused large-scale fires and detonation of ammunition on the deck. More than 800 sailors died, making the incident one of the heaviest losses for the US Navy in World War II. A dental care kit from 17th century England included a toothbrush with bristles, powder in a metal box, and a tongue scraper. Such items were used by aristocrats to maintain oral hygiene. Orphan teddy bear Wojtek was adopted by Polish soldiers in 1942 and grew up among them. He helped carry the shells and became an official soldier of the 22nd Artillery Company. After the war, Wojtek lived at Edinburgh Zoo as the legendary Soldier Bear. George Mallory and Andrew Irwin participated in the British expedition to Mount Everest in 1924. They were spotted near the top, but never returned to the camp. Their disappearance has become one of the greatest mysteries of mountaineering. Japanese kamikaze fighters were suicide pilots of the Imperial Navy during World War II. In the photo, the lieutenant receives the flight order knowing that the operation will end with his death. These missions became a symbol of Japan's desperate strategy in the last years of the war. The American Tunnel Rat examines the Viet Cong tunnel during the Vietnam War. Such soldiers worked in an enclosed space where each new level could hide traps or ambushes. Their tasks were considered to be among the most dangerous in combat conditions. Raquel Welch and Ringo Starr on the set of the satirical comedy The Magic Christian in 1969. The film, starring Peter Sellers and Starr, mocked the greed and hypocrisy of society. Welch played the episodic but vivid role of the priestess of the ship. The ranks of Vought F-4U Corsair fighter bombers prepared for deployment to the Pacific Front during World War II. These aircraft were distinguished by their high speed and firepower, becoming one of the most effective carrier-based fighters of the Allies. Jean Liber, known as the Two-Bodied Man, was born with a paralytic brother, Jacques, partially developed and fused to his chest and stomach. Such cases, called parasitic twins, are extremely rare and often became the object of public attention in circus shows of the early 20th century. New York, 1948. In the midst of the summer heat, residents often carried beds onto fire escapes. It was the only way to escape from the stuffiness in apartments without air conditioning. The practice was widespread until the 1960s. Misty Ayres, the 1940s. American burlesque dancer and actress whose career took place during the golden era of night shows. Her performances combined theatricality, extravagant costumes and provocative style. Ayers became one of the icons of the post-war burlesque scene. London Fireman, 1941. During the massive Luftwaffe raids, known as the Blitz, firefighting teams spent days fighting the flames among the ruins, saving the surviving neighbourhoods of the city. Soldiers of the 347th Infantry Regiment of the US Army received food on the march to La Roche, Belgium, January 13, 1945. The picture was taken during the Ardennes offensive, when troops were fighting in harsh winter conditions. Senet board game from the tomb of Pharaoh Tutankhamun, circa 1350 BC. This ancient Egyptian game was considered not only entertainment, but also a symbol of the soul's path to the afterlife. The experiment Universe 25, 1958-1962, showed that with unlimited food and water, but limited space, the mouse population is rapidly dying out. Overpopulation caused aggression, cannibalism, and refusal to reproduce. The result is the complete extinction of the colony. In 1965, Mercedes introduced a luxury module for rear passengers, a TV, telephone, minibar and radio in one unit. These cars were designed for wealthy customers and symbolized the highest level of comfort on the road. Such solutions became the forerunners of modern multimedia systems in cars. Japanese citizens listened to a radio broadcast of Emperor Hirohito's speech announcing the country's surrender. August 1945, immediately after the atomic bombings and the end of World War II. Photo from Benito Mussolini's police file, 1903. The future dictator was arrested in Switzerland for campaigning and participating in socialist rallies. Elvis Presley took to the streets of Memphis with his companion Mary Self, riding a 1971 white Harley-Davidson FLH Electra Glide. The rock legend, in a snow-white shirt and sunglasses, attracted the attention of the townspeople at every intersection. At the beginning of the 20th century, one could find eccentric costumes like this Christmas tree at festive balls. The woman was wearing a frame decorated with toys, garlands, and a shiny star on top of her head. Finalists of the Miss America pageant, 1925. The participants represented various cities in the United States, including the Bronx, San Francisco, and Lancaster. These early contests reflected the emergence of a mass beauty culture in the country. A woman in Stockholm buys stockings from a Strumportomat vending machine, 1956. Such vending machines made it possible to quickly purchase women's accessories right on the street. In the photo, she immediately puts on a new pair near the kiosk. Actress Jane Mansfield with her mother, Vera Jeffrey, 1950s. Mansfield was one of the brightest Hollywood stars of the time, combining a career in film and on stage. The photo reflects a rare personal moment outside the usual image of a film star. A soldier at a stadium in England during the Arsenal vs Carlton athletic match, 1940. He watches the sky in anticipation of possible Luftwaffe raids. Even during the war, football remained a part of life, but the games were accompanied by security measures. Lucy Higgs Nichols, circled in red, is a former slave from Tennessee who escaped during the Civil War and became a nurse with the 23rd Indiana Infantry Regiment. After the war, she moved with the veterans to Indiana. In 1892, her pension was initially rejected due to a lack of records, but 55 colleagues secured her appointment through Congress. In the photo from 1898, Nichols is depicted with veterans. She died in 1915 in New Albany, Indiana. Pacific Southwest Airlines flight attendants in 1960s uniforms. The airline from California became famous for its vibrant style and informal atmosphere on board, becoming a symbol of the nascent era of affordable air travel. The uniform and image of the crew made PSA one of the most recognizable airlines of the time. Charlie Chaplin and his family pose for their Christmas card, 1964. By this time, the great comedian was living in Switzerland, leading a secluded lifestyle after many years in the film industry. A sample of army food, Spain, 1791. These are jelly-like cubes made from cow bones and meat, developed by chemistry professor Joseph Louis Proust to improve the diet of soldiers at no additional cost to the treasury. Experimental lozenges were attached to his army supply report. The Goodwin family from England made this portrait shortly before emigrating to the United States. The parents and 6 children set off on the Titanic in April 1912. All 8 family members died in the crash. None of them were rescued. Elections in Yugoslavia, 1945. Wooden ballot boxes were used for voting, where voters dropped balls instead of ballots. The box for the Popular Front was upholstered in fabric and made no sound, while for the opposition it was empty, which made the choice audible. A woman cooks Breton pancakes, circa 1900. The tradition of making thin crepes in the Brittany region of France has been preserved for centuries. The picture shows the baking process in a large cast iron skillet, typical of the local cuisine. Fidel Castro in the Sierra Maestra Mountains, 1957. He is reading a newspaper in a rebel camp, preparing for further struggle against the regime of Fulgencio Batista. This rare shot shows him as a leader who combined military leadership with political planning. The photo shows the Kia TG-34A, developed in the 1940s for the training programs of the US Army Signal Corps. The device was used to automatically reproduce Morse code signals from paper tape and was used both in the classroom and in the field. Due to its compactness and protected body, it became an important training tool for radio operators during the Second World War. The photo shows 6-year-old Nancy Bentley, who was formerly enlisted in the Australian Navy in 1920 after being bitten by a snake. Since, according to the Charter, civilians were forbidden to receive medical care on board warships, she was listed as the mascot of the crew. 8 days after her recovery, the girl was officially dismissed from the service. The double-decker passenger bus of the Compagnie Générale des Omnibus Company on the streets of Paris, the beginning of the 20th century. The car belongs to the early motorized buses of the Brillier brand, which replaced horse-drawn carriages. These buses were used for urban transportation until the introduction of more modern models in the 1910s. The GE widescreen 1000 model from General Electric, released in the late 1970s, was one of the first large screens for home use. The design combined a large wooden frame TV and a VHS video recorder, reflecting the era's desire to make home movie watching as modern and prestigious as possible. The Beatles, 1962. The early lineup of the band was captured during a photo shoot next to a wrecked car. Musicians in costumes pose with instruments, guitars and a drum kit. Italian alpine shooter, circa 1917. A soldier uses an improvised cable car to travel between mountain positions during the First World War. Similar systems were used in the Alps for supply, evacuation and communication in hard-to-reach areas of the front. The prisoners' baseball team, circa 1910. Their executions were postponed until the team continued to win matches. Similar practices were used in American prisons at the beginning of the 20th century as a way to discipline and entertain prisoners. The photo shows a set of items found in the possession of serial killer Ted Bundy. Items include a mask, gloves, a flashlight, tools like an awl, rope, belt, trash bags, and other accessories. He used these items to kidnap and hide his tracks. Russian soldiers at the front of the First World War staged an impromptu performance, wearing homemade masks and costumes. Among the images are a figure in a rabbit costume, characters with fake beards, and a musician with an accordion. In 1978, the First Lady of the United States, Rosalind Carter, shook hands with John Wayne Gacy, one of America's most famous serial killers. The photo with her autograph became an ominous reminder of how Gacy, being a respected public figure, hid his crimes. The basketball card with Mark Jackson from the 1990 season became famous because of a random detail. In the background in the hall are the Menendez brothers, who were arrested the same year for the murder of their parents. The mannequins planted inside a wooden shelter in the so-called Doomtown in Nevada were used in nuclear tests in the 1950s. Such ghost towns were built to study how an explosion and shockwave affect people, buildings, and household items. The German Heinkel He-111 bomber crashes into the sea after the attack. The exact date and location of this image are unknown, but similar footage captured the work of the Allied air defences during World War II. Electric taxi Columbia Victoria rides along Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, 1905. These electric cars have been produced since the end of the 19th century and were one of the first mass-produced urban electric vehicles in the United States. The Amoco Cadiz supertanker crash off the coast of Brittany, France, March 1978. The ship sank after the steering was damaged, causing one of the largest environmental disasters in history. About 220,000 tonnes of oil got into the sea. A government employee works with punch cards and an IBM 401 electromechanical calculator in Amsterdam, 1948. The machine was used to process data during the preparation of elections to the lower house of the Dutch Parliament. US Vice President Richard Nixon and Chairman of the Council of Ministers of the USSR Nikita Khrushchev have a lively discussion at the American National Exhibition in Sokolniki Park, Moscow, 1959. The dispute, which went down in history as the kitchen debate, took place against the backdrop of an American household appliance exhibit. Among those present was a member of the Politburo, Leonid Brezhnev. The Murder Castle by H. Holmes in Chicago, built in the 1890s. The building had an intricate layout with secret rooms, stairs, and secret passages, which was used by Holmes to commit crimes. Members of Charles Manson's family at Spahn Ranch in California, late 1960s. It was there that the group lived during the period of preparation for the high-profile crimes of 1969. Austro-Hungarian stormtrooper soldiers wearing gas masks during the Battle of Caporetto, 1917. These detachments were used for surprise attacks on enemy positions in conditions of the use of chemical weapons. Major General Theodore Roosevelt Jr., son of US President Theodore Roosevelt, participated in the Normandy landings on June 6, 1944. He commanded the 4th Infantry Division and insisted on landing with his soldiers. On July 12, 1944, he died of a heart attack in France. The photo shows his temporary grave in Normandy, surrounded by the crosses of other fallen. Private Theodore J. Miller of the United States Marine Corps is photographed after heavy fighting on Eniwetok Atoll, February 1944. His facial expression became one of the most famous examples of the 1,000-yard stare, a state of severe combat exhaustion. Eniwetok was an important part of the American campaign to capture the Marshall Islands. Miller died just a month later, in March 1944. Actress Jane Mansfield poses by the side of a helicopter in an elegant two-piece suit, mid-1950s. Mansfield was one of the most popular Hollywood stars of the time and was considered a competitor of Marilyn Monroe. She actively used her striking image to promote her career in film and modeling. A military chaplain holds Mass at Fort Corcoran, Washington, D.C. during the American Civil War. The fort was built in 1861 to protect the capital from a Confederate attack. Worship services played an important role in supporting the morale of Union soldiers. Construction of the Brooklyn Bridge began in 1870 and lasted 13 years. In the photo, the workers are standing on massive stone abutments that served as the base for the suspended structure. Innovative methods were used for the construction at that time, including pneumatic caissons. The bridge opened on May 24, 1883, connecting Manhattan and Brooklyn. A dust storm approaches the city of Spearman, Texas, April 1935. These catastrophic events became part of the Dust Bowl, the ecological crisis that engulfed the Great Plains in the 1930s. Storms destroyed crops, made life almost unbearable, and forced thousands of families to flee their homes. The menu of the Woolworth snack chain in the middle of the 20th century, where no dish cost more than $1. A hamburger cost 40 cents and a hot dog cost only 20 cents. For a full-fledged dinner, for example, with eggs, ham and potatoes, you had to pay about 60 cents. Even a large portion of stewed meat with a side dish cost 50 cents, and a glass of Coca-Cola cost 10 cents. During the secret circumnavigation of the American nuclear submarine USS Triton in a fully submerged state, her only accidental witness was a Filipino in a canoe. On April 1, 1960, he spotted the submarine's periscope in the waters of the Pacific Ocean. The mission lasted 60 days and remained strictly classified. In the photo, prisoner Joe Aridi, Wright, gives his toy railroad to another prisoner shortly before his execution in the gas chamber. He was found guilty of murder in 1936, but it was later proven that he had not committed the crime. Aridi suffered from mental retardation and did not understand the essence of the charges and punishment. In 2011, the governor of Colorado posthumously fully acquitted him. Heath Ledger is pictured on the set of the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus in 2008. The picture became his last film work. After the unexpected death of the actor, the role was completed with the participation of other actors. The film was released in 2009 and became a significant event in his legacy. German soldiers from the First World War are captured in a dugout. You can see attached photographs on the walls, including an image of a woman. Such pictures served as a reminder of home and support in the difficult conditions of the front. If you've watched it to the end, please write your opinion in the comments, subscribe to the channel and like it.